I've been looking down Leviticus 16. Aaron's supposed to bring a ram and a bull. He's supposed to get from the community a scapegoat and a lord goat and a ram. So there's these two rams involved in this situation. And frankly, it's pretty much all it says is that he brings the ram for burnt offering, and then he has the other ram for a burnt offering, and then those rams aren't mentioned again throughout the chapter. Unless, yeah, no, it makes a distinction. They've got two male goats and a ram. And then up here they've got a bull and a ram. So I don't know. Those rams never come into it at all. So I have no idea what to make of the rams in this ceremony. But I'd like to talk a moment about the bull, where it says Aaron is to offer the bull for his own sin offering and to make atonement for himself and his household. And the question I have is, in my literary analogy, where the scapegoat might be Barrabas and the Lord goat might be the Messiah, could the bull be John the Baptist? Does this sound like something that a bull would do, being the voice of one calling out in the wilderness, "Make straight the way for the Lord"? So bulls don't quite come directly straight, but they like to move more or less in straight lines. San Fermin is the patron saint of Pamplona and the festival of the running of the bulls, and it says this guy just said that he was decapitated in the 2nd century for his faith, which is a nice reflection on what happened to John the Baptist, who was decapitated before, apparently just a little bit before Jesus was crucified in the 1st century AD. The most famous event at this festival is the running of the bulls. It says Fermin was uh, converted to Christianity by Saint Honestus, a disciple of Saint Saturnius, and he was baptized by Saturnius on the spot known as the Small Well of Saint Cernin. So here in Wikipedia it doesn't say Fermin was decapitated, it says that he was dragged to death. Meeting his end by being dragged through the streets with angry bulls running after him. Well, John the Baptist was not uh, killed by being dragged through the streets with angry bulls running after him. Rather, he was at the birthday request of Her Herod's daughter, Herodias. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted, and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother, and then John's disciples came and took the body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. Now, John was kind of bullish, and that was a little bit of the reason that Herod was agreeable to having him put to death, because John had been saying to him, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother Philip's wife." This is very straightforward and true. It doesn't even actually make any judgment of right or wrong. It's just saying that it's not lawful. Of course, if you equate the law of Moses with the law of right and wrong, then yeah, it does make sense to say it is a moral law. In any case, John didn't make exceptions for people in great power. He just said what was right and what was wrong, and he didn't care who he said it to. But this is essentially where we are in the story. Herod is taking on the role of Aaron, and John is taking on the role of the bull, and Herod Herod offers the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. That might be a little backwards because the whole thing is, okay, we've got Philip and Herodias. They have a daughter. John says Herod should not be with Herodias. I don't know why they have uh, names that are uh, almost identical. That's kind of strange. Um, but apparently Philip and Herodias have a daughter, and she does a dance, and then Herod says, "Oh, that's a lovely dance. I'll give you whatever you want." And the daughter says, on the behest of Herodias, "I would like John's head on a platter." And Herod says, "Ah, yes, let's cross him off." Now, does executing that bull make atonement for himself and his household? Well, if all you're concerned is about hearing somebody talk about it, in Herod's mind, maybe crossing off John was like making a sin offering, because by after he got rid of John, nobody was saying there was any problem with him being with Herodias. I still don't know why their names were the same, though. That's so strange. By the way, it looks like the name, it wasn't given there in that chapter, but the daughter's name was Salome. She appeared unnamed in Matthew 14. Other interpretations think that the daughter was also named Herodias. Okay, all this was basically a little bit of background material before I head into John testifying about Jesus in the end of John chapter 3. This is before John got captured, which I think may be a little bit odd. I think if you look into the other Gospels, uh, right after Jesus met John the Baptist, Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. And when Jesus came out of the wilderness, John had already been captured. So this is a bit strange because this has John. They came to John and says, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, look, he is baptizing and everyone is going to him." So he is not. So I don't think this is the Jesus that was in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. This is the other one. But anyway, John kind of replies more or less in riddles, uh, or not exactly riddles, just tautologies. And a tautology in logic is what I meant, a statement that is true by necessity or by virtue of its logical form. For instance, a person can receive only what is given them from heaven. And that more or less just defines what John means by heaven is just what the universe gives them. You yourself can testify that I said I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. And that's true, that he said he was not the Messiah. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. Maybe not necessarily a tautology. We tend not in um, modern day America to think in terms of uh, the act of marriage creating an ownership of one person over another. But it says the friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He must become greater, I must become less. At this point, um, I would think that John has met both of the Jesuses. He's met both Barabbas and the one to be the Messiah. And he knows that the bull is going away and it's time for the goat or the goats to come out. There's an odd turn of phrase here. The one who comes from above is above all. And then he repeats the one who comes from heaven is above all. I better check the Greek for that. But he also says the one who is from the earth belongs to the earth and speaks as one from the earth. So I was looking, and it looks like the only difference is between anoten and orano. Everything else seems to be the same in those two phrases. The one from above coming, above all is. And this is the one anoten from above coming, above all is. The one from heaven coming, above all is. So again, it is the same except orano here. The one from heaven coming, above all is. Up here it's ho, the one, and here it is ho ek tau. What's this? I'm not really seeing any real pattern. They're all prepositions and articles, kind of unimportant words, and I'm on the wrong spot. There we are. So where was that? Ho ek tau, article, preposition, article. Um, I don't know how they fit in exactly, but these two words, anoten and orano, they're almost synonyms because orano means the air, the sky, heaven. Anoten means from above or from heaven. Um, so those are essentially synonyms, but anoten can also mean again or from the top or from the beginning. So in some sense, I like the idea that it's from the beginning because that would indicate, for instance, that Matthew, Mark, and Luke are, more from the beginning because I think it's generally agreed that those gospels were in circulation prior to John's gospel. Even some people even think that John's gospel didn't appear until after some of Paul's writings. So that could be the distinction. The one from the beginning coming above all is. So in other words here, Anothen could be talking about from the top, um, from the beginning, from the very first. Not John's gospel version of Jesus, but Matthew's gospel version of Jesus. On the other hand, the one being from the earth is, and that might refer to John's gospel Jesus, who is more, we'll see as we go on that a lot of the things that seem like spirit in John's gospel are actually very, very earthly things. Moreover, what the meaning of John's gospel is kind of obscure. What he has seen and heard, this he testifies, and the testimony of him no one receives. And the reason nobody receives it is in part because it's deliberately obscure. It has kind of this double meaning effect. It usually seems like John's gospel is saying one thing, but actually it's saying quite another. So what I'm kind of looking for in this, we're looking for a testimony that although is right there, right in front of us, it is a testimony that no one receives by reading it. Then it says, the one having received his testimony has set his seal that God true is. And that's another kind of priority. I want to try to find a interpretation of the John's Gospel that is consistent with what I believe to be true. Now, you might notice that I've already suggested that John the Baptist, in saying, make straight the way for the Lord, is sort of a bull, And um, obviously, a bull is not a bull, a man is a man, but still, it in some way shares sort of the spirit of a bull. And I also suggested that Herod, King Herod, might have offered that bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. So, how am I setting my seal that God is true? I'm not exactly looking for a literal truth, but maybe more of a spiritual truth. And let's see if it kind of gets into that in John 3:34. He whom for sent God the words of God speaks, not for by measure he gives the Spirit. I'm going to have to look at that in English. It says, for the one whom God has sent speaks the words of God, for God gives the Spirit without limit. Okay, there's a little bit of a difference here. This sounds like um, it's a whole lot of Spirit. It sounds like God sent somebody with a whole lot of Spirit to speak the word of God. But this is a little bit different. He whom for sent God the words of God speaks not, for by measure he gives the Spirit. I'm reading this almost the opposite. Um, and this feels more like the where I am. I'm not claiming to have any big measure of spirit, um, but rather I'm speaking of God not by measure of the Spirit, but rather than having a lot of Spirit, it's more I'm setting my seal on truth. I want to be able to be able to say, okay, this really, really makes sense at the end of it. Now, this part is kind of scary. John 3:35, the Father loves the Son, and all things has given into the hand of him. Why would I say that's scary? It's scary because of the book of Job. In particular, Job 1:12. The Lord said to Satan, well, very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. And then in the next chapter, Job 2:6, the Lord says to Satan, very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life. So when John says the Father loves the Son and all things has given into the hand of him, I remind myself that the Father of, at some point, God or the Lord in Job gave all things into the hand of Satan. And in John's Gospel, the Father gives the Son or puts everything into the hands of the scapegoat. And by the way, this is kind of something that will be a repeating theme through the following chapters, is that Jesus will talk in a sort of what am I riddle, except he will always refer to his father and how he is born of his father. And it'd be like a real simple one. You go at red but stop at green. What am I? You must be a stoplight. I'm tall when I'm young, and I'm short when I'm old. What am I? Honestly, I have no idea, but it tells me down here the answer is a candle. And so there are a number of riddles in John's Gospel. I think they're riddles anyway, that are of this sort of form that this I have received from my Father. And then it's not really something where you think, oh, this is you will you would think he's talking about something spiritual, but he's actually talking of something that is quite earthly. You'll see several examples of that as I go on. So it comes to this: what does it mean to be believing in the Son? It says the one believing in the Son has life eternal. The one not obeying the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. Here's my opinion. It is impossible to believe in something unless you know what it means. So before you can believe in anything, you need to understand what it means. And so that's more my goal right now. I don't want to believe in something before I understand. There is one possible exception. Believing in yourself is something where you have faith that you can succeed and you keep trying to succeed. So that is a situation where um, if you believe in yourself, um, you have a much greater potential to, um, well, be written down in the history books. And if you don't believe in yourself, you're much less likely to get written down in the history books. So that's the trouble with this is there's various possible interpretations of the Son, and before you can believe in the Son, you have to establish which of those possible interpretations you actually mean. And what I find in a lot of cases is that a lot of people have a completely ambiguous concept of what they mean by believing in Jesus or believing in the Son of God or the Son of Man. They might have a very specific concept of what it means to believe in Jesus, um, but it really doesn't do them any good. And in large part, it puts them in a situation where they're constantly dealing with the wrath of God because they're constantly fearing hell because they don't know if they're believing hard enough or something like that. They don't know if their faith is righteous or correct. They're constantly in doubt about their faith. And so in those situations, the wrath of God abides in them. So rather than having some ambiguous belief about the Son, I would rather have more specific ideas of what I believe. And I think that wraps up John chapter 3.